Hello lovely people, welcome to another episode of Book Chat, the weekly roundup of stuff I have read at some point in my past. I've got 3 books I want to talk about this week. Shall we crack on with it?
Sophie Vlogs.
I'm going to kick things off with Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo. I'm going to say a bold thing. This is one of my favourite books I've read this year. I picked this up because it was the book chosen for my book club at work. I've been meaning to read it anyway. The reason why I was a bit hesitant about this book is because I'm not normally great with books that sort of like follow people and are almost like character studies that maybe don't have the most driving plot line. I've read a couple of books like that before and I've just really not gotten on with them, and I found it a real struggle to connect. So I sort of was a little bit nervous that that was going to be what was going to happen reading this. What actually happened is that I got so sucked in and I really loved this. I think it helps that I read this in like 2 days in the countryside, sitting outside in a garden, drinking copious amounts of tea and Prosecco, and it was just like the perfect time to read it because I felt like I was really able to immerse myself, because the form of the prose is like, it's not really, like, if you can see, like, it all sort of like runs on, like punctuation, like full stops and stuff aren't really used that much and stuff like that, so there's like this flow to the narrative, which if I'd have had to read this in fits and spurts might not have worked so well for me, but because I was just able to really sit with it and absorb it, it worked really well. We change perspectives a lot, but all the people somehow tie back in. There's sort of like this theatre performance around which everything sort of like revolves, so we get a lot of people who are tangentially in this place at one time. We get like their perspective and like a look back at their lives and stuff like that, and one thing I really enjoyed is seeing the ways in which these threads came back to tie in with each other. That was like an aspect that I really enjoyed. And then also the ways that like you get to see the bias of perspective. So there are, you get a character's own opinion of themselves, and then you get to see that character from someone else's perspective and see that opinion of them. And this like multiplicity of self that sort of is inevitable when you are a person who interacts with other people. And then the ways in which characters that you might initially like, and then they come out with something or they do something, and then you like have to kind of reassess, and you're like, oh god, you did this thing though. I felt like it was a really great way of showing you multiplicities of people and how people who have the same identities can be so different, and how their journeys with those identities can be so different, and then also like what is like things that seem to be a little bit universal and stuff like this. Like, I don't know, like I just adored immersing myself in this book. The characters within this are largely black British women. There is also a non-binary character, and each perspective, even though they're all written in the same form in this way that is quite flowing because of the sort of lack of punctuation and the way that everything sort of like leads into everything else, even though it's written in a similar form, each character did feel very distinct to me. Like, I didn't feel like an overlapping of personality. Like, it felt very clear how each person was. I just feel like it was just such a wonderfully immersive moment, and I absolutely adore this. I thought it was really great. I now want to read sort of everything else that Bernadine Evaristo has written, because I know that the rest of her books are, they sound like they're all quite different and distinct, and I quite enjoy that when authors, you know, each time you read a different one of their books, it's like its own distinct experience. That might make no sense. Obviously, that is the general gist with a lot of books, but you know what I mean. So yes, absolutely adored it. Had a fabulous time. Still haven't had my book club on it yet. I will have by the time this goes live, but as of recording, we haven't had book club yet. I know that 2 people who have read it also really loved it. I'll be interested to see how everyone as a whole has found it, but I'm quite looking forward to having like a nice chatty discussion about it, because I feel like I have lots to say. Yes. After that is a bit of middle grade. This is The Smoking Hourglass by Jennifer Bell. This is book 2 in the Uncommoners series. I realised when I talked about book 1, I kept calling the place Lunador. It's Londonor, because it's like an alternate London. So in the first book, these 2 kids, Ivy and Seb, discover that there's this place called Londonor, which is like an alternate London full of uncommon objects, which are objects which seem like common things from our world, but they do magical things. In this book, they are going back to Londonor with their granny, Their gran is starting to remember things about her past that she had forgotten in book one. She's starting to remember them in bits and pieces, but it's not a full picture yet. While they are there, this symbol called the Smoking Hourglass keeps appearing on things in sinister ways, and Seb and Ivy are trying to figure out what this smoking hourglass symbol is. There's some like mystery solving, that sort of thing. On the one hand, I feel like I potentially enjoyed this more than I enjoyed the first book. Slightly because I felt like I was more like grounded in the world a bit. Like the first book is very much like introducing you to the world and the concept and stuff. Whereas with this one, I was like, okay, I'm familiar with the world, let's explore this mystery, and I enjoyed that. This is a series which I think is like a solidly enjoyable middle grade kids book series. It's not one of my absolute favourite ones that I'm like top of my list to recommend to people. Oops. But I do think that for middle grade readers, I do think it's perfectly fun. I think that I personally potentially enjoyed this more than the first one. I'm not sure if I'm enjoying this series enough to buy the third book, is how I'm feeling. I feel like for middle grade age children, this is a really fun series. I feel like for me personally, it's not one of those middle grade series that I really am going to prioritise continuing with, but I think there are some really fun ideas, and I do think that this world of Londonor has a lot that it can explore and give and that sort of thing. It's just, for me personally, this might be where I'm ending. I don't know. I'm gonna sit on it, and then in time I might be like, I really need to know what happens next. I don't know. I don't have that right now. Finally, just to change genres again, I have The Legend of Sigurd and Gudrun by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is Tolkien's interpretation of the Volsunga saga, which is a old saga which follows Sigurd and Gudrun, and there's a dragon slaying, there's stuff like this. I back when I was in university debated doing my dissertation on the Volsunga saga. I was going to look at epics from different places. I ended up just focusing on the Iliad. So I came into this knowing the Volsunga saga and being quite familiar with it. That said, it was very interesting to read Tolkien's interpretation. This is very much interpretation, not a translation. I will be very clear about that. And Tolkien has a lovely way of writing, if you like his way of writing, which I do. So it was fun reading his take on this. This was never completed. So Christopher Tolkien has sort of like filled in the gaps, and then also there's like a commentary towards the end, which is excerpts of notes that Tolkien made, just like notes from Christopher about stuff. So in many ways it was an interesting look at adaptation in some ways, because this is also this is a verse translation. So A, interesting reading Tolkien doing like a poetry version of the tale of Sigurd and Gudrun. Yes, yes, yes. B, very interesting seeing this like adaptation process of like condensing this into verse. Tolkien's commentary both on the things happening in the text and then also the act of doing this not translation, but this interpretation type thing. A very interesting sort of moment. I would recommend this for people who really love Tolkien's writing and want to sort of read everything he's written, or who like reading sort of interpretations of ancient epics and stuff. If you are new to Tolkien, this would not be where I would tell you to start. You know, like it's a text that I feel benefits by coming in with prior knowledge. I would be interested to know what the experience is like if you come in with no prior knowledge, because I just wonder how well that would work. I don't know. It was interesting. That's what I'm saying. I had a fun time. I just don't know. I think maybe the audience might be a little smaller than for some of his other works. No, you tell me. But yes, that's everything I wanted to talk about this week. I would love to hear your thoughts if you have read any of these. Otherwise, I'll see you next week for some other bookish chat.